Rama is asking a series of questions. I think the questions can be summed up under the general question of how come such and such a thing exists. Given that everything is this absolute Brahman, this omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient cosmic consciousness, given that that is the sole reality, how did all the other stuff come to be? In the previous chapter, Rama was asking about, well, how did the notions of I and the world come to be? And Vasistha tries to explain that. And in this next chapter, he seems to be talking about time. But basically, you can't actually answer these questions. Although Vasistha tries, and the answer is invariably not particularly satisfactory. So why even try to answer them? And I suppose by even realising that these answers are unsatisfactory, we realise that there's something wrong in the question. And well, let's see how we get on here. Vasistha continued. At the same time, the same infinite consciousness held in itself the notion of a unit of time equal to 1/1,000,000th of the twinkling of an eye. And from this evolved the time scale right up to an epoch consisting of several revolutions of the 4 ages, which is the lifespan of one cosmic creation. The infinite consciousness itself is uninvolved in these, for it is devoid of rising and setting, which are essential to all time scales, and it is devoid of a beginning, middle and end. So basically that tells us nothing. It's trying to suggest that there's a notion of a very short time within the cosmic consciousness, and somehow that short time evolved into the longest periods of time. I mean, I don't see why the longest periods of time shouldn't be a notion in the mind of the cosmic consciousness. That infinite consciousness alone is the reality, ever awake and enlightened, and with creation also it is the same. That infinite consciousness alone is the unenlightened appearance of this creation. So creation is the unenlightened appearance of the enlightened cosmic consciousness. And even after this creation, it is the same always. It is ever the same. When one realizes in the self, by the self, that consciousness is the absolute Brahman, then he experiences it as all, even as the one energy dwelling in all his limbs. When one realizes in the self, by the self, because who is it that's doing the realizing? Who is it that's doing anything? It is only consciousness, and it's a question of consciousness realizing. It's a matter of consciousness realizing itself. It's your consciousness. One can say that this world appearance is real only so far as it is the manifestation of consciousness and because of direct experience. And it is unreal when it is grasped with the mind and the sense organs. It isn't really grasped with the mind and the sense organs. That is a notion that we have. Sense organs, a part of the cognitive process, it's part of the way we try to understand things. All there is the experiencing. And when we're tuned into that, then we're tuned into consciousness manifesting itself. But when we start thinking about it, when we start asking questions about how we come to experience such and such, well, then we're getting caught up in notions of the mind and notions of the sense organs. Wind is perceived as real in its motion, and it appears to be non-existent when there is no motion. Even so, this world appearance can be regarded both as real and unreal. This mirage-like appearance of the three worlds exists as non-different from the absolute Brahman. The creation exists in Brahman just as the sprout exists in the seed, liquidity in water, sweetness in milk, and pungency in capsicum. But in ignorance it appears to be different from and independent of Brahman. There is no cause for the world's existence as a pure reflection in the absolute Brahman. Where there is notion of creation, the creation seems to be, and when, through self-effort, there is understanding of non-creation, there is no world. Nothing has ever been created anywhere at any time, and nothing comes to an end either. The absolute Brahman is all, the supreme peace, unborn, pure consciousness and permanent. Worlds within worlds appear in every atom. What can be the cause and how do these arise? As and when one turns away from the notions of I and the world, one is liberated. The notion of I am this is the sole bondage here. And he's talking about notions here, isn't he? It's all notions. We live in an ocean of notions. They who know the infinite consciousness as the nameless, formless substratum of the universe gain victory over samsara. Repetitive history. I think it mentions later on, the Yoga Vasistha talks about the infinite encompassing the finite. If the infinite is everything that is, the finite is part of the infinite. And the finite can be understood as limitation, as ignorance, as cognitive process. Within the infinite is the finite. So it is, there's nothing, this is the way it is. This is called niyati in the next chapter.